Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Janine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age, and today I'm joined live by WPP CEO Mark Read.
Hi,
Hi,
Janine.
Mark.
Hi, Janine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. No, I'm really good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So before we get started, for those of you watching at home, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels and we will try to get to them during this conversation. Mark, it looks like you are working from home still, or are you back in the office, or are you guys still working remotely?
Well, it's a bit of a mix, Janine, but like as you said in your introduction, those of you at home who are dialing in, I think kind of says it all, really. So I'm working at home at the moment, and have been, I guess, really for the last few days. You know, we sort of got to about 20% of people back in the office in London, and then we were asked to work from home, you know, when we can. So while the office is open, most of our people continue to work from home. But it's really a changing, you know, picture globally. In China, we're really back to normal. In Germany, we're probably up at about 30% capacity. In the UK, we've got to about 20%, but now, as I say, most people are really working from home. And in the US, it's been really slow actually to get people back. And I think that, you know, just reflects the situation on the ground in the markets that we're in. And we're really just trying to be, you know, cautious in terms of the speed at which we bring people back, and just be, you know, make it really very much a voluntary process. But look, I have to say, I am concerned about it, but maybe we can get into that in this discussion.
Absolutely. What was it like for you on that, you know, first day getting back into the office? What was the experience like?
But look, I have to say, it was fantastic. Might be certainly didn't feel like the first day back at school, but it was great to see my friends and our colleagues. You know, this is an industry, you know, where, you know, the boundaries between, you know, working and personal life blur, and our colleagues are our friends in many cases. So actually, it was really great to be back in and re-establish that divide between, you know, being at home and working in the office. Someone made a comment to me, you know, I don't know whether I'm working from home or sleeping in the, you know, I don't know, I'm working from home or sleeping in the office. I think it's difficult, right? So it was really good to be back in, and I've been keen to get people back in, not all of the time, but some of the time, because I think that sense that, you know, life will get back to normal, that there is sort of light at the end of the tunnel, and that mix is right. We're never going to go back to the way we worked, you know, before COVID, and it looks like by the time we get through this, we'll have forgotten what life was like before COVID. So we'll have learned lots of new skills as well.
Let's talk about that for a bit. You know, what are your views on the future of the physical office space and what, you know, working might look like moving forward?
Well, I think it's much more profound, to be honest, than whether we're in our office or working from home. Actually, over the last 6 weeks, we've learned to work in very different ways. We've learned to use technology to communicate. You know, we've been trying to get people at WPP to adopt Microsoft Teams with very limited success for about 5 years. And we saw a 60-fold increase in adoption in the first, you know, 10 days. And so, you know, the way we work has got much faster. I was talking to the CMO of one of our largest clients, and he was describing how, you know, he's now sitting at his kitchen table, working directly with, you know, the creative directors, sitting at their kitchen table, cracking problems. And that would never have happened pre-COVID. It would have been a series of briefs and meetings and everything else. So, look, there's a debate about the role of the office, and I think that we're going to have to make our offices attractive places for people to work. They're going to have to be, you know, a reason to come into work more than a reason to work from home. But I also think that we're really going to have to learn from how we've worked, you know, faster, quicker, in new ways. I think it's been fantastic, the involvement of senior clients in the work, you know, sort of shaping the work rather than just at the end of the process, approving it. And I think, you know, our people have really stepped up as part of the process as well, in terms of managing, leading client relationships. So there's so much, I think, that we can learn from the last few months that I think will really transform the industry in the future.
Yeah. Do you think we ever go back to a time where, you know, we're sitting at our desks 5 days a week, long hours and all of that? Or do you think that, you know, for the foreseeable future, it'll be more of this hybrid model and flexibility for more of the work-life balance?
Yeah, well, look, clearly it's going to be a hybrid model. And we did a survey, and only 2% of our people wanted to be back at work 5 days a week. So, you know, I think that actually the most popular choice, I think, was 3 days a week, followed by 2 days a week in the office, followed by 4 days a week. And, a fair number of people never wanted to come back into the office at all. But I think that, we all work 3 to 4 days a week in the office. But I think we have to think much more about what we do from home and what we do from work than actually just being in the office. And, personal product, the point I'm making is personal productivity is fine, but actually, business is about more than just personal productivity. Your job as, my job as CEO or job as a creative leader or anyone is to, train people in the company. So I think that there's a big, learning and development element of our work that we forget, that just goes beyond personal productivity. And we must not lose that in the process of reshaping the workplace of the future.
Anything that you've learned about being a leader remotely and doing this when people are dispersed in various locations?
Yeah, well, my biggest concern, particularly the last few weeks, has been, the mental health of our people. I've been really worried about, how people are feeling. And, I can speak for myself. There are times, it does all feel a little difficult, particularly when, having had a great summer, we're all told we're going to be locked up for the next 6 months. So I'm very conscious of, how our people feel. And my job, we have 100,000 people around the world at WPP. My job is sort of chief wellbeing officer to some extent, as well as chief executive officer. And I have to make sure that, our people know that it's, all right to ask for help, that actually we should be there to look out for our colleagues. But I think generally through COVID, we've all learned about the importance of communications, the business ultimately that we're in, and its role, inside a company and outside a company in terms of building brands and everything else. And, whereas before I might have flown to Italy to do, a town hall, I realized that now I can do much of that by video, and it's not quite as good. It's just as good. We ran a 2-day leadership meeting last week. And actually we brought, we normally fly about 150 people to Brooklyn. This time we had about 375 people online. And actually the percentage of people where it greatly exceeded their expectations was bigger on the virtual meeting than in the real life meeting. Now, that may be because their expectations were not that high and higher to beat. But, not only did we involve more people, we saved, a lot of money and 500 tons of carbon. So, it was net, I think, a really great way of bringing people together. And, I think many in our industry are longing for that sort of physical contact and seeing people in person. But also, I think we've realized that, we can make this work pretty well, but there are downsides in terms of, loneliness and everything else that come with extended periods of working from home.
Yeah. Of course, COVID-19 has put pressure on the ad world, resulting in restructures and the like. Are there any structural or organizational changes WPP is thinking about or implementing due to the pandemic?
Yeah, look, I mean, no business is, immune from the virus, really, and our industry is no different. Clearly our revenues were impacted in the second quarter. I'd say much less than we would have expected coming into this. And actually, we saw, some slight sort of improvement in July from the second quarter. I think we feel comfortable, that the worst is behind us. I would say that the changes we made in WPP in terms of bringing, Wunderman and J. Walter Thompson together and VML and Y&R together have been really effective. I mean, in the US, it's amazing to me. VML Y&R actually grew its revenues in the first half in the United States, despite all of the challenges. And actually across WPP, 11 of our top 30 clients grew globally in the first half. And I think we have benefited from having, larger clients in sectors that have been relatively less impacted. And actually small businesses have had a really tough time, during this pandemic. And I think, we and others are fortunate in terms of the types of companies that we work with. So, clearly, with a shock of this size, we're having to look at our cost base and what we need to do there. But I think we've taken most of the actions that we need to take. And if we can see, a continued improvement, we can see, no major second wave, no major lockdowns, then I think that, we're in a reasonable place. But clearly, in the current environment, we can't give cast iron guarantees. But we've really tried during this period to protect as many jobs as we can within WPP, because it's the right thing to do and it's the right thing to do for our clients. And certainly it's been really important to us, as a leadership team.
Could we see consolidation of agencies?
What I mean, but what do you mean by that, Janine? Within the world?
Within WPP, would you consider any consolidation of agencies, or are you thinking
No,
about any restructuring in that way?
No, I think the bulk of what we want to do, we did 2 years ago. I think, if we look at our global footprint, we are, going to have to look at what we have in terms of further flung locations, and we said that on our investment meeting. But I think the bulk of the restructuring that we need to do at WPP, we've done already.
I'm Janine Poggi, and I'm here with WPP CEO Mark Read. I want to say hi to those of you watching at home. We have Mustafa from Istanbul, Richard from Kuwait, Robbie from Texas, Eleanor from California, Stephen from Wisconsin, Anthony from Canada, Jennifer from Ghana, and Lucas from the UK. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions, leave them on our social channels and we'll try to answer them here. So one of the things that we've heard a little bit of chatter about is that WPP is looking to back a new agency started by former RGA execs. Is that true? Anything you can comment on there?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really comment on that, Janine. They're very talented individuals. We'd be very happy to do something with them, but not. I can't be drawn on that at the moment, I'm afraid.
I want to pivot a little bit and talk about D&I efforts and what WPP has been working on. Can you provide any update on DE&I commitments WPP has made this summer?
Yeah, look, I think clearly, the killing of George Floyd, was a moment for all of us to reflect on, whether we've done enough to tackle diversity and inclusion in our industry and in our own companies. And I think many business leaders realized that actually they hadn't done enough. I think I'd focused quite a lot on gender diversity, and I think it's fair to say, I hadn't focused enough on racial diversity. And really, it's become, or it is a major priority for me to make progress. I joined a number of safe room discussions, and it was very revealing to hear, the raw emotion from people, the pain and anger that they felt, and that I don't necessarily perceive, as a white executive in our industry. And so, I realized that we need to make significant progress. And at the time, we made 3 commitments. The first was to take on the sort of 12 principles that the 600 Black advertising professionals, actually now 1,200 Black advertising professionals laid out. And some of those we were doing and some of those we were not doing, but we've committed to implement the 12 principles that they had. And I think that that's really important. The second was to invest $30 million over the next 3 years in initiatives within WPP and outside of WPP to tackle racism and to promote a more inclusive culture at WPP. And we're working our way through how we will allocate that money. And we have quite an interesting model to sort of co-fund initiatives inside our operating companies in that area. And then lastly, really to use our voice to fight racism. And I think the best example of that would be the work that Keith Cartwright has done with Procter & Gamble, a piece of work called The Choice that you can see on the Procter & Gamble website. Now, if I look at the progress that we've made then, and I would say to you that people really want us to make progress quickly, and I recognise that, and so actually sort of fast action has been a major priority. But I think we also have to understand that these are systemic issues, and we aren't going to address them in 3 or 6 months. So we have to move sort of decisively, but I think systematically. And so Jackie Canny, our new Chief People Officer, has been leading the team throughout our people organization or our talent organization to put in place the systematic changes that will be needed. We did publish our EEOC diversity data, and we've committed to do that in more detail and with more thoroughness in time for our sustainability report that comes out with our financial results early next year. We have formed a Global Inclusion Council, and they met for the first time. I met with them for the first time, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. People drawn from all around the world of WPP, from the United States to Korea, to South Africa, to India, to the UK, to Brazil, and representing the full nature of what we need to balance at WPP in terms of inclusion. And I think most importantly, we're working at the moment on how we include specific targets for representation in our incentives for our senior executives in 2021. And we had Mark Morial, the president of the National Urban League, join us last week at our leadership meeting, and he said something to me that really struck. He said, when you give business people a problem, they put someone in charge, they establish a budget, they set targets, they measure progress. He said, and what business executives need to do on inclusion and diversity is take the same approach. And that's really what we're trying to do at WPP. And I think if we can take really structured approach to this, we can make a difference. And that's something that personally it's very important to me that we do.
What are the timeline internally that you've set for accomplishing some of these things?
Well, I think that there's so much we have to do. There's no one single deadline. As I said to you, we'll have incentives in place for next year. We'll publish our data by March next year. Our Inclusion Council has already met. I recognise that we used to have an executive Sol Gio on our board. Now Sol has left. We don't have a person of colour on the board, and I hope to be able to update people. It's really a decision for our board, but I hope we'll be able to talk about that much more quickly. Actually, our board is 50-50 male-female, but we do need to address racial diversity on the board, and that's something that we're really tackling now as a priority. So I think that there's various timelines for the individual actions that we're taking, but I can tell you that Jackie came and did a presentation to the board at our last board meeting, and that they take making progress on this very seriously, and they will hold me to account for delivery, which is the right thing to do.
You mentioned releasing some data. Will that include global diversity numbers?
So it will be as global as we are able to produce. As the data is governed by different standards in different parts of the world in terms of respecting people's privacy, and we can't give data in every market in as detailed fashion as we can in the United States. We operate in, I think, 112 countries around the world, so it's not straightforward to do this. And some data, you have to ask people what they're prepared to disclose and everything else. So I think that it will be as global as we can make it, but we will do it in detail in the United States among as many other countries as we can do it in.
Gotcha. You talked about racial diversity and gender diversity. I do want to touch upon the comments that you made about the average age of WPP employees being less than 30 and not dating back to the 80s. Do you have any additional comments on that, and what you were talking about as it relates to age of employees within the company?
Yeah, look, I think what I would say is that clearly modern marketing needs data skills and technology skills, and it also needs skills of creativity and consumer understanding and planning and art direction and copywriting skills that may be called more traditional. And the point I was trying to make was that we need that blend of skills, neither one thing nor the other. And clearly, age is not the identifier for experience. So I think that really what matters is experience for us.
So it's not about like younger employees necessarily having more of those experiences in digital, data and all of that. Do you think that impacts, the job skills that are needed in the agency world currently? Does age actually matter in that respect?
Well, look, I certainly think age should not matter in that respect. And actually, if you look in our business, there are many people, who are younger or older who have experience in data and technology and those new skills. And I think that is what's important. I would say, over the last few weeks, I've talked to a number of people in our industry, and clearly, I think there are people in our industry that find the industry overall ageist, and I hope that that's not the case at WPP. I think it's challenging, for people that get older, and that's something that I think we need to make sure that we address. But I don't think it comes down to skills and experience. And actually, what we're trying to do at WPP is do a lot of work to make sure people have the skills that they need, for the future. And in our earnings release, we announced that we trained 20,000 people on certifications, on Amazon and Google and Salesforce and other technology platforms to provide them with the skills that they need for the future. But as I said at the beginning, modern marketing needs the right blend of skills, and that's not really about age.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you if you do think that the advertising industry has an ageism problem, and if there's anything that WPP is thinking about specifically to tackle any issues with that.
So I think from what people have said to me, it is a challenging, industry when you get into your 50s, and this is a challenging time for people, and people are being laid off of all ages, and I think that is particularly challenging for people in their 50s who find it hard to get back into the workforce, and applies to both men, and to women as well. So I do think that we need to be cognizant of that, and part of that though is about training people for the skills, and as in the other areas of diversity, making sure that really we're hiring people based on their merits, not based on any other criteria.
We have a few more shout outs. We have Margot from New York, Sherry from Illinois, Talis from Virginia, Abdul from India, Bayard from Tennessee, Paula from Ecuador, Greg from Florida. And of course, if you have any questions for those of you watching, feel free, ask away, and we will try to get to them here. So, Mark, what is your outlook for the industry, for the second half of the year and early 2021?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Look, I think I'd say I'm cautious about the second half of the year, but actually I'm optimistic about the industry and about the future for WPP. Now, why am I cautious? I think that we were all impacted by COVID quite significantly in the second quarter, but I'd say not as much as industry analysts expected of any of the companies in our sector. And I think that the second half will be better than Q1. So I think we can say with confidence that the worst is behind us. But I think that it's still going to be challenging because the trajectory of the virus, the likelihood of vaccine, these are all things that are unknown to us, and I think therefore we have to be cautious. But I would say what I would take away from conversations I've had with clients, interestingly, our client satisfaction scores have been higher the last 6 months than they've been in the last, since we started collecting them, the last 2 or 3 years on a consistent basis across all of WPP. Our relationships with clients, and my peers in other holding companies have said the same thing, our relationships with clients are stronger now than they've ever been. I've actually spoken to 50% more clients than I did in the same period last year, albeit by video rather than in person. And I think a lot of clients realize that they do need partners like us to help them navigate the future. And we really sort of followed a 3-part framework for our clients, helping them react to the situation. And that was really what we did between March, April, May, make sure that their messaging was correct, that we replanned their media to maximize their investment. We saved clients hundreds of millions of dollars by replanning media. Then there's the whole process of recovery that we're in. How do we help them? How do we help Ford sell the Bronco? How do we help airlines get back in the air? How do we help people get back to business? And again, I think as a industry, we play a critical role in giving consumers the confidence to get back to business and back out and into restaurants and aeroplanes and hotels and everything else. But then I think what's really interesting about industry now is how we help clients with renewal, because what we've seen over the last 6 months is probably the greatest period of compressed innovation in history, where industry after industry has moved online, driven by necessity, but moved online at the speed that no one thought was feasible. And I think all client organizations are now thinking about, how do I renew myself? How do I really reinvent what I'm doing for this sort of technologically driven digital future, whether that applies to the shift in media consumption, whether it applies to the growth in e-commerce, whether it applies to how they use marketing technology, how they adapt to Google, Amazon, Facebook. I don't think there's an industry that has a better insight into how to do it, how consumers feel, and how to implement it than ours. So I am actually very optimistic about the future for our industry and for WPP's role and the role of our agencies within that.
Given that, what would you say is the biggest impact of the pandemic on the agency model?
Look, I think that the biggest impact is that short-term compression, that period of crisis management, of having to bring people together, having to manage our cost base, having to make sure that we were financially resilient. But then within it, I think actually it's brought people together much more closely. I would say that WPP is a more cooperative company today than it was 6 months ago. I think it's brought us together as a leadership team in a way I think that's interesting. I think it's brought us and our clients much more closely together. So I would hope that it has reinforced in the minds of our clients, our importance as an industry and as a partner, and that, just like the debate we were having before, that actually you need to understand what consumers are thinking and doing. It's not just about technology or pipes or data. Actually, let's call it old-fashioned skills of consumer understanding and planning and creativity, really are critical to crafting messages and engaging with consumers in the right way. Because when we come out of this pandemic, people are going to be in a very different state of mind. Some people will be, ecstatic. Some people would have lost loved ones. Some people will be out there. People are going to be in very, very different emotional states. And I think we need to understand, how to communicate with them in the right way for the future. And there, I think our industry is critical.
We have a question from Hello Goodbye on Twitter. What does Mark think about S4 Capital, and how is WPP or its peers differentiated from S4 Capital?
Look, I'm not really here talk about S4 Capital, so sorry to disappoint you. But I think that what we bring is is extremely strong global partnerships with major companies around the world. We're able to exercise what they do, and I think that we have a really strong position with our clients in that respect. We really understand how to blend creative and technology skills. Our mantra is creativity powered by technology, and I think that's what modern clients want.
We have another question from Sandavi on LinkedIn. As fresh talent looking to enter the ad agency industry, what does it take to be successful? How good is the work-life balance at the moment?
So when people ask me for advice, I always tell them to go and read David Ogilvy's book, because I think that most of what he said is as applicable today as it was when he said it. And after reading David Ogilvy's book, you probably read Lester Wonderman's book, because the two of them probably wrote the definitive books on modern marketing, if only a few years ago. Look, I think the work-life balance in our business is probably not as good as it should be. And I think actually, from talking to people and from the people surveys we've done, it has suffered during this pandemic. The lines between work and home, work and pleasure have really blurred. And I feel it myself, and I know our people feel it. But I think that when we all get back into the office, maybe not 5 days a week, but 3 or 4 days a week, I think that that will be good. And look, our industry is such a fantastic industry, I think, to start a career in. I mean, the careers that people have gone on to within our industry and outside of our industry, and the ability to look across multiple clients, to deal with creative problems, to understand what's going on at Google or Facebook or Amazon, I think makes this a fantastic industry to start your career in. So I'd only encourage you to join us.
We have one more question before I let you go. Scott on LinkedIn. What does Mark believe will be the lasting effects of COVID, even after it's behind us, on the ad industry and or its clients, besides teleworking?
Besides teleworking, well, I think that is going to be different. That is going to be the difference, isn't it? I mean, I think it's going to be a much more we're going to have a much more flexible approach to our people. I mean, we are going to have to trust our people more. We've all learned that we can't judge whether people are working or not by whether or not they're sitting in front of their desk. So we are going to have to judge that.
Anything in terms of the lasting impact on the business itself?
No, I think that it's going to be the compression of technology and creativity is really going to drive needing our people to understand both things, and that I think will be the other half of the coin.
Thanks, Mark, for joining us.
Thanks very much, Janine. Really appreciate everyone's questions and listening, and thanks to everyone from WPP out there that's listening, and our clients and potential clients.
Thanks, and be well.
Great. Thanks, Janine. Take care.
Thanks to our Ad Age crew for making this live stream happen, and thank you everyone for tuning in.